let's say at noon on May 22nd, 2011, did you have any idea that a big storm was coming?
I mean, I knew that a storm was coming, but it wasn't anything that impacted my life at all. So,
Yeah. So
yeah.
you remember how you basically spent that day? It was a Sunday, so was it just a sort of hang out and chill day, or what? How did you spend that day?
Well, so I go to church, and so we had church that morning, and then we actually had uh, I might get emotional, so I'll just preface that. But we actually had plans that afternoon to do a barbecue with one of my friends, and several of our friend group would have gone to that. Um, but his wife was doing some things with her parents, and it ended up taking longer, and so it got pushed later and later throughout the day, and so we ended up not going over there. Um, I actually was, since that was the case, I actually it was really important to me
Yeah.
that I get my hair washed before I had to turn these movies in to a different town later, so I could be drying on the drive down to that town later. So,
Wow.
um, but yeah, that was our plan, like lunch, barbecue, wash
Yeah.
my hair, drive down and return these movies. So just a
Okay.
normal day.
Yeah. Well, so then, so the barbecue was canceled, or the time was changed because this other person was doing, that time got pushed, and so is the plan then to drop off the movies and then to go to the barbecue after that?
No, it got pushed later and later. And so by that point, since I knew did have to go, the town for the movies was about half an hour away.
Yeah.
And so uh, part of the main reason I mentioned that is because, and I don't think I want to just jump into this yet, but my friend whose house we were supposed to be at, he didn't make it. And so we all would have been, our whole group would have been at that house for the barbecue, without enough shelter at that point. And so um, it's crazy how, like I said, just because of that stuff pushed back. And so we didn't go. And then some of the other friends that had kids, the only other group that had kids, since my kid wasn't going to be there, I think they chose not to be there as well. So it all kind of funneled around um, that situation. But yeah, it was I don't, yeah, let's save that till, if you have more questions about that, let's save that till later because I get, um,
Okay.
yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Well, so then where were you then? I think the tornado hits the town. Well, let me ask you this. At what point or where were you when you realized that what's coming to Joplin is a bigger deal than what you would normally maybe see in May or June or July? Do you remember where you were when you realized, okay, this isn't just a big storm, this is something bigger than that?
Well, I don't think I fully realized it just until it hit, but we did. Like I said, I was really focused on, I have a lot of hair. So I was really focused on getting my hair washed so that it could have the drive time to dry and I wouldn't have to spend time drying it because it's ridiculous. But we went back home. It was my son and I, and he was about, I guess he was 7. Um, at that, or I guess he would have been 8 at that point. But so he had some friends come over to play since we weren't going anywhere, and it was just neighborhood kids that were joining us. And outside, um, the weather, the sky looked different. It was green and like dark. It was a dark green, and it was very interesting and cool looking whenever when you see it beforehand. But it wasn't a I mean, I've lived around here my whole entire life and nothing ever came of tornado warnings. Like you get you go sit in the basement or you go sit in your closet and then you get out and be done. So I really wanted that time for my hair to be dry. So that was all I was focused on. It was pretty ridiculous. But so I got home, they were playing, we were gonna go. I told them all to come inside though, because it did look like it was going to be storming, and I didn't know the other children very well. I didn't know their parents at all, and I just didn't want to worry about what they might do.
Sure.
One of the boys actually, he seemed like he was just a little bit off. Like he was a good kid and nice and friendly and everything, but more dramatic and more just something a little bit different for him. So I didn't know what types of things would happen. I'm like, you guys just come on in and play video games. I'm gonna take a real quick shower and then we're gonna go downstairs to the basement. And
Yeah, did
yeah,
you
that's
have
pretty
on
scary.
the weather on the news? Were you
No,
weather
um,
reports or?
no, which, like I said, nothing had ever impacted my life. So if it's raining, you go inside, and if not, then you do whatever you want.
Oh,
So there wasn't really a big need for. I didn't feel the need to watch the weather. We were watching it on the porch, but it
yeah,
wasn't something I was focused on or considering at all.
yeah, but you could tell it's going to be a significant storm, and so you bring the
Yeah,
boys in or you bring the kids in from the outside
yeah.
with the assumption that it'll pass, and then we'll go back to doing what we were doing.
Yeah, I figured. I mean, I knew we'd need to go downstairs. I'm sure that, it was a watch, but I was sure it was going to turn to a warning. But the my the plan for that is go down to the basement. That's it.
Yeah.
So there wasn't a lot
Did you hear tornado sirens?
at that point. I did not, but pretty. I think about as soon as I got in the shower, then you could hear tornado sirens. So I just figured I better take a really quick shower. And so like, I just need to get this dry so we can sit down and wait. And yeah, it got pretty crazy. The cool thing, like looking back, I could see God's hand through so much of it. I never take my phone into the bathroom with me if I go take a shower. Like I feel like that's probably bad. It's probably bad for it if you have the moisture, the humidity in there.
Right.
But at the time, my ex-boyfriend at the time had called because his work, but they were starting to take shelter at his workplace, and so I felt like I better, like, if they're taking shower. It never, at no point did not washing my hair cross my mind. It was full on, that's what I'm doing, I'm washing my hair, we're gonna shelter, and then we'll go down to Neo show. But he had called, so I listened to the voicemail as I was walking into the bathroom, which thank God that I did, because then I had my phone sitting in the bathroom with me. So I hopped in the shower real quick, took the fastest shower I've ever taken in my life. And the time literally, as soon as I turned the water off, the power went out. Like 1 second later, like turn the water off. And I was like, man, like I hit that right on. I did a great job timing that. So
Yeah.
I ran to the door of the bathroom, and I opened it, and I just cracked it and yelled out to the kids. And I told Landon, I said, get the dogs and get the boys, and you guys get down to the basement and don't come out until I get there. And about that time, so I shut the door back. I'm trying to dry off my legs, and try to put some clothes on as quickly as I possibly could, which I still remember. It was a tank top and some like Victoria's Secret sweatpants, and I was trying to get my legs dry because when you have like wet skin, it's hard to put sweatpants on, especially. So I was just rushing. And about that time, the window, so out of my bathroom, and there was a bedroom, and then there was a dining room and the top of the stairs to go to the basement. And so about that time, the window to that bedroom like blows in because the storm's happening so much. So I grabbed a towel and my shirt over to my chest, and my phone. Apparently, I didn't even remember grabbing that, and ran downstairs to the basement with the boys. And so they're sitting in the stairwell, and I have them move over away from it and turn the lights off and look the other direction. So I could get my shirt on. And they're sitting there, and they're kind of, the one boy was, well, I'll back up a little bit. The one that I wasn't real sure about, as soon as the lights turned out, as soon as the power went out, he yelled, well, my son yelled, power outage. And that boy starts yelling, we're all gonna die. So that just shows the varying degrees of, like I said, I don't know exactly what kind of, condition he had or situation
Yeah.
that he had going, but he was definitely very scared the whole entire time.
So I don't want to be flippant, but the tornado is hitting at a really bad time for you. You've just stepped out of the shower. You've got these young kids in the house. So
Mhm.
I want to ask about, what you remember about your own sort of state of mind, and then you mentioned two things that the boys said that I want to ask you about, and as we proceed. But so you said the electricity goes out, and then not long after your window blows out. In your own
Yeah.
mind, um, let's say when the electricity goes out, but the window hasn't blown in yet, right? So we're just sort of pressing pause. What is your own thinking at that time? Because you're scrambling to get dressed after you get out of the shower. You've got these kids, you've got a big storm. Is your own thinking at that moment before the window blows in, is your own thinking, oh gosh, what a hassle that I have to deal with this? Or do you have a sense now that, this might be something pretty serious? What's your own thinking before you really
Honestly,
know for certain that
yeah.
is going on?
I still didn't think it was a big deal. Again, power outages are pretty common. I was just really proud of myself that I timed it like perfectly. As soon as I got out of the shower, boom, the power went out. So I was like, I'm crushing it right now. Like I'm rocking this part. So I wasn't scared. I was like, okay, boys, like get downstairs just because in case that something else
And
does happen. But
and how much time passed before the window blew in?
I mean, maybe a minute, not very much.
And was that when you realized, okay, this is,
Yeah,
now I know it's serious?
yeah. I was like, I'm an idiot. Like, grabbed my stuff. I just remember thinking, like, grabbed my stuff up and ran downstairs, at that point. So,
So you go downstairs and your son says power outage and the other kid says we're all going to die. Now when,
well, actually, that was before the window blew in. Like,
oh,
as soon as it all went out, like, I just hear them yelling, and I went to the door and I'm like, just get the kids, go downstairs, like, get the dogs, everything's, just stay down there and don't come back out till I get down there.
when
So.
when you heard your son say that, did he kind of seem to be in this place of, okay, power's going out, no big deal? Was that kind of his?
Yeah, like he was kind of like party, like power's out, yay, like it's an adventure type of thing. And the
Yeah.
other boy obviously was not having that type of reaction. So I was just trying to tell him to get out there because I can't do anything until I get dressed. And
So what, so when he said, we're all going to die, the tone of his voice indicated he actually was very concerned.
yes, yeah, he was definitely panicked.
And very soon thereafter, the window blows in,
Yes.
and now you realize that something serious is here. So pick it up from there. What happens next?
So I ran downstairs. Like I said, my first thing was, get these boys, for me to get completely dressed.
Yeah.
And again, they were all probably within a grade of his, I would guess. So I didn't know the other two children, just my son. And so, I was thinking about how their parents were probably going to be panicked because I didn't have their numbers or a way to get a hold of them or anything, just to tell them, hey, your kids are inside and they're at my house or anything like that. So, and they didn't know their phone numbers. And so I just couldn't call them whatsoever. But the one little boy, I don't even know his name. I feel bad, but he was just completely panicked. So when we got down the stairs, so it was an unfinished basement. And so when you walk down the stairs, there's a little bit of room to the left and where I had a freezer, like a deep freeze. And then there was another little side entrance. It was an old, the house was probably like 80 years old at the time. And then there was a deeper, the long skinny portion of the unfinished basement that went further under the house. And but I didn't want to take them back there because if the house did fall in, I wasn't sure that we could get out. And where we were at in just the shallow portion there, we had two possible exits to get out. So I was like, well, if we just stay right here, we can go up the stairs or out this other little hatch. I don't know what you call it, like the hatch part.
Yeah.
And so we were sitting right there, and the one little boy was just, he was just really hysterical, and he would get really hysterical. And so I just remember walking him through he was crying and saying how he wanted his mom. And, I was like, well, I'm sure your mom wants you too, and so I was like, the thing about it is your mom, if you were with your mom, what would you be doing? Like she'd probably be hugging you, like, come here. I pulled him, not my kid, but my kid was calm, so I pulled him on my lap and I'm just hugging him and like talking him through everything, that all of his questions. And so he'd calm down, and I was like, your mom, if she were with your mom, she wouldn't be as worried. But sometimes it's nice when your mom worries, because it just shows that it's a reminder that she loves you so much. And then we stopped and we prayed, and just that we were protected, and for all of the kids in the neighborhood, and just for their families and their homes to be okay. And we got done, and the boy was then crying and saying how he started crying again, and said how his house was going to be destroyed or ruined. Their house was going to be ruined. And I talked him through that. I'm like, if your house is ruined, then I'm sure you guys have insurance. We'll just get more. You'll get a new house. You'll fix it up. You can replace the house. You can't replace the people. So do you guys have a basement? And he said yes. And so I told him, I'm sure his family was safe and all of that. And so he calmed back down, and then he started crying because he wasn't going to have toys. His toys were going to be ruined. So at this time, the tornado is hitting, but I don't really know. I remember other things that happened, but I don't really remember the order exactly. I remember the order of what I was focused on, but I don't remember how that matches up with what I wasn't focused on, if that makes sense.
So as you're having these interactions with this boy, so you're paying attention to him, but is another part of your mind also paying attention to what's going on outside?
Not really. So not outside really at all. More so what was going on inside, because you could hear things like hitting the house, and you could hear like loud booms. But that's where I'm not really sure what part of the conversation I was having with him. I'm not really sure when those things were taking place,
right,
tied together. So I was aware of them all in order chronologically, but not how those two pieces fit together. But and the one thing, so I guess I'll say that there was definite damage to the house. Like I was aware of that. He was aware, the small boy was aware of that. The other boys were, my son and the other boy were sitting quietly. Like, I think they were being calmed. They were just believing everything I said, which it was all true, but to calm this boy down, and so they were just listening to it and like, oh, okay, she's not worried. Like, at no point did I like freak out, or like there was no point. Everything was in control. Like, we have all this together. And I was just trying to focus on like calming this kid down, because I knew he would scare them if he got out of control. And so he brought up good points, valid points. He did finally get to the third thing, where he said that about toys, if his toys were all gone. And at that point I was like, well, you know what, you'll get new toys. Like, I'm sure people, if our houses are damaged, I'm sure the community will pitch in and pull together, and you'll probably get a whole bunch of like new free toys, and he was, crying. He calmed, okay, and then he'd start crying, and my yard, which I don't know. It's interesting that he knew that his yard would be messed up, which, because our yard was, the grass and the dirt was pulled away from the, I guess, the ground. But I felt like that was, I'm like, how did he know that? When we came out afterwards. But at that point I was like, okay, like the whole place is going to be a yard. That was my response to that one. I'm like, it's all going to be okay. Like, we're going to be okay. And
now, where was your house? Where was your house on the storm's path? Were you close to the center, or on the fringe, or where were you?
So I want to say we were close to the center, but I also didn't watch anything about the tornado at all for years afterwards, and I didn't pay any attention to that, honestly. We were in the path, but obviously, but I don't know exactly.
What kinds of sounds did you hear? You said you heard things slamming into the house. What sort of different sounds did you hear? And of course, a lot of people talk about the sound like the train that's going by. What sort of sounds did you hear?
I mean, it really does sound like a train. Like it's different than thunder. It doesn't sound like there was thunder and lightning happening beforehand. Um, but the train sound was really distinct. And I remember thinking like, oh, it really does sound like a train. Um, the other thing that, yeah, we had, so the basement was a part of a chimney, like the chimney was right beside the stairs to the basement, which the fireplace didn't exist anymore, but the brick chimney still did. And you heard that like topple over. Um, it sounded like in front of the door to where we would climb to come out. And that is actually where it hit. But I remember thinking like, oh, I'm glad we stayed here so that we can get out the other way, because I didn't know if we'd be able to get out up the stairs anymore. So yeah, I used to hear that, and then lots of little like nicks and things. It was so shallow so sorry, I'm skipping around, but as you walk down the steps, the space to the left of the stair and until you get to the wall was probably only like maybe 8 feet. And so but that's where we were huddled. And so I just had to keep them right there. And as the storm was hitting, like, I don't know if you want to call it debris or rubble, or it wasn't big items, but pieces were like hitting me in the back of the leg and hitting me on that side because I was blocking the boys so that so that he didn't see anything that was coming down. I didn't want him to get any more scared ultimately. And I didn't want them to go over that direction. And I didn't know what he would do if he was scared, if he would run around or, like I was just trying to keep him on that side of him. So
You described your own state of mind, and you've got this kid that you're trying to keep calm.
mhm.
So was that kind of where all of your mental energy was going? And because was there a time where, the thought went through your mind, like, I wonder if we are gonna, I wonder if we are,
No, that never crossed my mind. And I don't, it's interesting, like of all the times in my life, it probably should have, but I was never afraid of not making it. I just was afraid, I just was concerned about how he was feeling. And how the other boys were feeling. So they were like, well, they're good. They're believing everything I'm saying. Keep in here, just hugged up on all three of them. And yeah, so.
Wow, wow. So you've got the storm passing. Do you know, just guessing, how long it took before the tornado just passed?
I'm actually notoriously bad at knowing how much time has passed in any given situation. So it's sometimes I don't have a very good gauge on that.
Yeah. Was it one of those things where, in reality, it wasn't really long, but did it feel like at the time, did it feel like this thing is just going on and on and on, or did it have this, it kind of went quickly?
No, it felt like it went really quickly. Yeah, and it just was like, oh, now it's done. Like it wasn't like lingering.
That's what
I don't know, it was just like room, and then it was like over, basically. So it felt like.
that's what I've heard. That it's just sort of all of a sudden it's just quiet. Now, in your case, one of the things I'm interested in is, now the storm passes, and some people say, just then everything just got like freakishly quiet. Other people say they heard certain sounds. How about you? Was it that the kid just kept doing his thing, and so in a way it didn't change, or did everything get really quiet, or what?
I don't really remember. I don't really remember much anything about it being quiet or noisy. Like by that point he had calmed down, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to go upstairs and see what we're dealing with here. And so I had told them, I was like, don't cross this line. I drew like a line it was because it was unfinished, but it was like, kind of dusty down there and stuff. I was like, don't, you guys, I'm gonna go upstairs, see if you can find something to play with, but like, don't cross this line. And they were like, okay. And actually, about that time, I stepped over to go. I was like a foot away from the stairway, so I stepped over, and it was just sky. So it's when I looked up the stairs, it was just like looking up to the sky, and I remember being irritated with myself because I should have known that there was no roof, because there like it was leaking into the ceiling of the basement. So if it's leaking in there, then obviously there's no roof, but I hadn't put that together yet. I wasn't expecting to just see sky, I guess. And I was like, okay, and I'm like, I mean it, don't cross this line. And so about that point, my son was like, well, I have to go to the bathroom. I'm like, of course you do. But there was a drain. It was an old time, bathroom where they would come in and from work and shower off. So there was a drain on the floor. And I was like, well, if you guys have to pee, like, you just pee down there. And I remember they're just little boys. They thought it was hilarious. And I went on upstairs, and I think they did proceed to, I think they all peed in that drain on the floor, and thought it was awesome, I guess. But so I get up to the, yeah.
No, I was just gonna say, I mean, that's, you've got this huge thing that's happened, but then you've got this other just normal boy stuff that's going on, and these. So I've got this image, you're walking up the stairs and you don't see the ceiling of your house, you see the sky.
Yeah, and that's even before I stepped up the stairs. So I'm like, if they take 2 steps over, they're gonna see that there's nothing, and I don't even know, like, all of them. I'll lose all of them at that point, is what I was thinking. Like, I just need them to just stay here as long as I can, until I figure out, what's going on. But, and I mean, I'm barefoot too, because I ran from the shower like straight down there too. And so I'm climbing up to the top, which, by the way, my hair is completely like dirty and wet, and like I've got like dirt and stuff all over me. The shower was pointless. So but and I remember like laughing about that, but I looked down at one point and I was like, are you kidding me? Like, that was my sole focus, and how trivial and minor that it was, like, especially in retrospect.
Wow.
But yeah.
What was so when you saw that the roof is gone, the roof of the house is gone, I'm imagining, well, what is left? The roof is gone. What's left of the house? The basement obviously is still there. What's left of the house?
So a lot, pretty much all of the walls were still at least partially standing. So they weren't, there was nothing, there was no roof at all. But most of all the walls were pretty much still at least halfway standing. Or leaning in on, some parts. It wasn't a big house, but so at the top of the stairs, so the door entrance for the top of the stairs is right here, and where the chimney was is right here. So it had all fallen in, and then like the wall to the outside was right to the right of the stairs. So I think that wall might have actually been gone. I don't remember, because I was focused more away from that. But and then I remember being like, I was worried about being able to open the door from when all the bricks and things had fallen, and like the door was gone. Like there was no door. I just was able to like walk up and like crawl over like the piles of bricks. So I was like, that was
so the door had
amusing to me, I guess, at that point.
Wow.
Yeah, the door and that wall. So that wall must have been, I mean, like I said, it was at least half gone. I don't know.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what's your first response? I mean, do you remember saying anything? What's the first sort of thought that goes through your mind? Now your house is destroyed. You've got these boys down in the basement. What's your first thought?
Well, my first thought as I was walking up the stairs is I need to get some shoes. Like, I need to find some tennis shoes. Like, hopefully I have some. And I did. So I had my inner closet. There's a closet in an internal that wasn't on the edge of the house or anything like that. And it was a spare closet, but I didn't have a lot of things that I used very often in there, because it was kind of more, we used it more as a storage closet. But I did have some things in there too. And I had a lot of my stuff in my bedroom was still there. It was just covered in, debris and like that fiberglass stuff. So everything was, a lot of my things were still technically there. They were just ruined, I guess it's the best way to put it. So
I want to ask, where you stayed that night, but you've also got these boys who aren't yours in the basement. So what's the process of getting them back home? And did they still have homes?
Yeah, so that was actually okay, so 2 things. By the time I get to the top of the stairs, there were 2 things that were 2 thoughts, and I'm like, I gotta get shoes. And then it was like, I got to get these boys home. And also you could smell gas, and there was a really strong smell of gas. And the house across, when I get to the top of the stair, the basement stairs, on it, where I can see that across the street, because that wall was partially gone, and I could see that the house across the street was on fire. And so I'm like, so there's a gas smell and there's fire. And so I'm just like, we got to get out of here, because I didn't know how far. Probably should have paid more attention, probably like 5th grade science, but I didn't know exactly how much gas would need to be in the air before it would cause a problem, like, and how far that ratio is.
Right.
But so I ran in, and I get to the top and I run, and I found one of my sons, actually both of my sons, Nintendo DS. He had 2 at the time, and both of them were still okay and still working. So I grabbed those because I was like, that'll be important. And I got some shoes on, and I was heading back down to the basement to give them those so they wouldn't come up and see what was happening. And I could hear one of the boys' dads yelling his name. And like I said, I knew it then, but I don't remember it now.
Yeah.
And I just was yelling, like, he's okay, like, he's okay. Cause I just got chills thinking about it, how terrifying that would be, to know, like, that your kids, you don't know if your kid or even where he's at. And so I was like, he's in here, like, he's okay. And so he came over, and I asked about his family, and said, no, they're all okay. Their house was gone, but they were all okay. And the other boy, I was like, do you know where that boy lives? And he did, and his family was all okay. And they had like half of their house still had a roof, I guess. And so we all like went over there just to get them home, because I was like hugging on him anyway, and gave my kid a piggyback ride. We just walked over and took them home so we could check on their other friends that they had prayed for. We wanted to see if they how they were doing and everything. So we do that. We get there to these strangers' houses, and so several people were kind of basically huddled down, not huddled, but like huddled up in the basement, or like this, I think it was a basement. It might not have even been a basement. It was just dark. And I remember that some of the couples, the parents out of some of them, like, seemed like they weren't getting along very well. And I was like, I don't even know who to be, friendly with. I don't have any way to help anybody. I'm not going to ask any of them for help. And the boys were playing the DS. And there was some other kids and stuff. And so they were trying to play around. And I just remember thinking, like, they're all really negative. And it's as of course we would be, but I mean, I was in the point where I was trying to make the best of things and trying to be, have the kids like having a decent, like, feeling okay. And everybody was just really like short-tempered, and maybe not everybody, but there was definitely a vibe of that. And I'm like, wait a minute, I don't have to be here. Like, I don't owe these people anything. It just seemed kind of like you go into a spot where you're supposed to be. And I was like, I don't have to be here. Like, I did what I needed to do. So like, I told my son, and in the meantime, I had been trying to call. I was really fixated on calling the fire department to try to get that fire put out across the street at my house. And we couldn't get through because everybody was trying to make phone calls, and several lines and towers and things were down, I think. But I got to that point, and I had been trying to make phone calls, and finally I got through. And then I went back in there to the room where all the other families were gathered together, and it was just like, I don't like this vibe, and I don't know why we were here. And so I told my son, I just went up to him and I was like, hey, have you ever seen the firemen put out a fire before? And he was like, no. And and I was like, well, like, it's an adventure, let's go. And he's like, okay. So we go on, and we went over there to watch that.
So the firemen did come and put that fire out.
Mm-hmm, they did. So we got out and we walked over back that direction. And we watched the whole thing. Yeah. And it was like, we were honestly, like, we were fine, and I wasn't even, I don't know. It just, people kept saying, I was like, oh, well, you were just in shock, and you were in shock. And I'm like, no, I think I honestly just don't place that much value on material things versus, once in a lifetime not opportunities, but experiences. And
Wow.
so I'm like, this is where we're at right now. Like, this is never gonna happen, hopefully it never happens again. But like, we're right here now. Like, let's go, like, not sit in the basement and play on a video game, like, let's go walk around and like, let's see what's going on. Let's see what's out there. And if people need help or if there's anything we can do to make sure nobody's like trapped under anything.
What
So that's what we did.
what sort of things did you see?
Um,
You know?
Actually, everybody that I'm aware of in those in the blocks that we went were everybody was fine and basically doing similar types of things. Everybody's kind of checking and like, hey, how are you? Or, is everybody in your family okay? And where we were at, everybody that we talked to in that, it was probably like a 6 block radius at that point, was okay. We was worried about like, don't step on these power lines, like stay away from, these types of things, and making sure the kids didn't do that. And one of our dogs was missing. We had one of them, but the little puppy, but the other dog was missing. So we were kind of keeping an eye out for him as well.
Did you find
So
them?
we did. He actually was in the bathroom. He got pinned. So he had apparently we had a clawfoot bathtub, and so he went and hid under that. But then the doors to that blew inward, and so he couldn't get out, and he wasn't barking. He was probably terrified. But so we found him like later that. Well, we didn't find him. Our friends came up, and they ended up going through the house and looking for what was salvageable, and they ended up finding him and bringing him down to us. So
Was that a couple days later?
it was, I think it was that night,
That night.
because it started to rain. It also was raining afterwards. And so I think they went up to see if there was stuff that's salvageable before it got wet. And I remember they were laughing and trying to get my shoes. They're like, oh, we know women's shoes are expensive. And she did have, like several pairs of those. So
Where
yeah,
did
we
you
went.
stay? Where did you stay?
We stayed, so I'm actually from Neosho, Missouri, and which is like 20 minutes south of there. And so we ended up staying down there at my friend's house. Actually, well, we went there first. I think we stayed there for that evening, and then I think from then on, we stayed with my mom after that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
What was salvageable from the house, or of the things that were salvageable, what was the most important thing to you that was salvageable?
That's a great question. Let me think. Several of the items, so a lot of the clothing was technically there, but you couldn't, after you washed it, it had, I don't know if it's like the fiberglass or if it's what kinds of things are in there. It was just embedded with things. So some of the stuff was like, because I was like, oh, my spare closet was basically everything in that was still there, but it was, it had, I don't know, it had something that would like smell kind of funky. At first you think more of it's going to be, like, oh, okay, that dresser's still, like half there. I can use the drawers and things like that, but it's like water damaged and everything else off of it. So I'm sure there was some things that were salvageable. I just don't remember what they were.
Now, in your own case, there's another survivor I interviewed, and we've mentioned your hair a number of times, so that's question.
Yes.
She says that for about 3 days, she was in a car when the tornado hit and the windows blew in. And she said for about 3 days after the tornado, she kept finding little pieces of glass in her hair.
Oh,
Did you
yeah.
have any of that sort of experience?
Yeah, it was, I mean, that was, so the first thing I did, because again, we referenced how important me getting my hair washed and cleaned was to me that day. So I had to take another shower that evening, like relatively quickly. I mean, because at that point I was just covered in dirt. Like we'd been walking around the town, or not the town, but the few blocks. Well, we had to walk quite a ways to get to the person who came to find us, their vehicle. Because he couldn't drive anywhere. They were all like, all the roads and things were down and you couldn't walk. There was no road signs. So we walked, I mean, well over a mile just to get to the vehicle where he had last been able to drive. And it might have been quite a bit further than that. I'm not really sure at that point, but so yeah, so I'm sweaty and covered in dirt and like everything, all kinds of everything else. And we get down there, and on the way back, on the way to Neosho, he actually got a flat tire. in about halfway, pretty close to Neosho. And so my friends came and picked us up from that, and he was left dealing with the truck. But
What was your own car
yeah.
destroyed?
So my car, this is a great story actually. My car, it was a 1998 Mercury Mountaineer. Okay, and this is in 2011, so it was an old car at that point, but it was in the same spot where I parked it. It had a tree had fallen on the top of it, so it was dented in, and the running boards were like splayed upward over it. It had a pole had gone through the back, like not the windows for the back seat, but like the triangular window part. A pole had gone through those, and another tree had fallen on the front of it. Like a smaller tree had fallen on the front of it, and the license plate had been ripped off, but it was only across the street, which I think that was fascinating, because if something's going as full speed to strong enough to pull a license plate off of the vehicle, you'd think it would take it a lot further than just the width of the street. So it was in the neighbor's yard though. It's all the glass, the front glass was shattered. The back glass was fine, actually. With the expensive glass that has the warmers running through it, it was completely fine. The thing started. Okay, turn the keys in it, and it started. Like I was amazed by that. And I ended up, since it was paid off and everything, I ended up keeping it as a spare car. Like it was, completely scratched and dented, and like from little debris and everything all over the place. Got it detailed. The people that detailed it were like, what is the story on this vehicle? But I took it to get its first oil change, probably, I don't know, maybe a month after the tornado, because in the meantime, I wasn't messing with it. It took that long just to get where I could get it running and do anything with it. But I took it to get its oil changed. And then a couple years later, my brother ended up staying with us for the summer, and so I told him he could drive that vehicle like while he was in town. And so he took it. So he went to take it for oil changes, and the people at Speedy Lube they're like, this thing's still running. They're like, yeah, it got picked up in the tornado, and they found it in Arkansas, and it still ran. So it had its own little legend, the Tornado Mobile. Yeah, that part was totally not true, but it was just funny how it had transpired.
Gosh. Well, we're running short on time. So I have one more question or two more questions. And so the first one is, you describe yourself as not nonchalant, but not panicked, just sort of, the homes are important, but the people are more important. And the people around here, my son, these other children, they're fine. You describe these people who probably before the tornado didn't get along, and the tornado didn't help them to get along. They continued not to get along afterwards, and you saw that. Was there a time, sometime afterward, where it did kind of settle in on you, the seriousness of what had happened? And I mean, just saying that, you lived through one of the biggest tornadoes in American history. I mean, even if you didn't know that particular fact, was there a point a bit down the road when you realized how huge this thing had been?
I think, honestly, okay, so later that night, it was probably about 11 o'clock at night. Whenever I found out that my best friend didn't make it, then everything hit me. But that was like, still, it wasn't the fact of, the house or the stuff. It was just like, we're going to have a lot to do, but like, it'll be fine, and everybody's like, I can't believe you're being like this. And I was like, it's just, none of our stuff was that nice, it'll just take time to figure it out. It'll be fine, I'm like, we'll get through it. Like, you guys are already being awesome to us, and it's just another adventure, and then when I found out about my best friend, I lost it, and then I was kind of done for like probably the next complete day. I don't care. I didn't care. People are like, let's go do these things to see what we can do. And I was like, I didn't care about anything else at that point. But that being said, even I remember just being so surprised that so many people in other parts of the country, there was just such an outpouring, everybody was coming to Joplin to like help, and there's so much volunteers and things, and I just remember being like, that's amazing that everybody's doing all this stuff, because, and I mean, I don't know, I feel like I didn't see it as big of a deal as it was, even still, for a long time, even though I think I probably did, but I was just blocking those feelings. But I just remember being like, tornadoes or hurricanes, all kinds of things like hit all the time. It's not, I don't know. I just remember thinking that it was interesting how many people were willing to reach out and how many people did want to help, and just, thinking that the world was a lot better than I thought it was, that there's a lot better people in the world, a lot more good people in the world than I thought there was previously.
Yeah. What was your friend's name?
His name was Don Lansaw. He was awesome.
What was awesome about him?
So many things. Everything. He always liked people to have a good time. He cared about everybody. He always stood up for people that were getting picked on. He just had a great sense of humor. He was incredibly loyal, and if he said he was going to do something, he was going to do it. So he was just an awesome human being. And he actually, I don't really talk about this ever, but I do want it to be noted, like how much he loved and adored his wife. And he actually had passed on, saving her, like protecting her. Like they had got her get in the bathtub and laid on top of her, and she's an awesome person as well. And it's just, I don't know, that was just a big loss, and the world lost a lot that day.
I mean, the house was ripping apart. I honestly, it happened so fast, and all the pillows were flying off of us. The only thing I managed to do was keep one just right in front of my face. So.
Don Lansaw, a former high school football star and the love of Bethany's life, threw his body over hers as their house and their world was being ripped apart. Oddly, in the house where the storm took Don's life, it didn't take their high school varsity jackets. It didn't take all the books off the shelves or all the stuff out of the cabinet under the sink. Friends found their wedding photos and brought them to the house where Bethany is now staying.
Just such a great man, and loved by so many people.